Would have not started a co-hosting company. I would have just done straight into management.
Today, I'm super excited to be here with Aaron, CEO at Conmigo Vacation Rentals. Started more than 13 businesses. When did you realize you had to change things up?
The biggest reason was scalability became really hard. It's hard to have 30 to 40 owners with 40 different accounts on Airbnb, VRBO, and others. At the end of the day, the money's going to them, to a client. And we had clients and they wouldn't pay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and where we aim to bring together entrepreneurs, leaders, investors, founders, operators in the vacation rental space so that we can learn about their stories, the lessons that they have learned along the way, as well as maybe some of the mistakes that they might have made along the way so we don't have to make those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Aaron. He's the CEO at Conmigo Vacation Rentals. He's a short-term rental asset manager, an investor. He's a boutique hotelier. He's been doing this for more than 10 years. He's a serial entrepreneur. He has started more than 13 businesses over his entrepreneurial career. We're going to be talking about scaling an operation. We're going to be talking about when is it a good time to step back from a certain business opportunity or a certain venture. We're going to be talking about mergers and acquisitions, partnerships, buying boutique hotels. Very, very exciting conversation ahead, so stay tuned. Thank you so much, Aaron, for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. And before we get started, we always start with this question here in the show. You've been doing this for more than 10 years again. If you were to start all over again, all right, and you had the opportunity to either do something differently or just, go back and give your younger self some piece of advice, what would you do differently, or what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know today?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for letting me be here. Quite the intro. Don't know if I live up to all those qualifications, but gonna fight for it either way. What would I change? I would have not started a co-hosting company. I would have just done straight into management, not done co-hosting. I think co-hosting is the biggest disservice you can do for yourself.
So for those that, are out there and are thinking, what's the difference, right? We've had several people on the show where we've discussed it, and it almost seems like there's different interpretations on where to draw the line, in terms of a co-host versus a property management company. One of those has to do with the, being the merchant of record, like who collects the payments. But then some people think it comes down to, the actual scope of the services delivered. So what is your definition of where you draw the line there in terms of being a co-host versus a property manager? And why do you think that being a co-host is, something you would suggest avoiding?
I think co-hosting is it's a lower barrier of entry, and so a lot of people have jumped into it without thinking what the end is from the beginning. Most people, they get into it, they want financial freedom. Co-hosting is a great way to do that. However, once somebody gets to that 15, 20 unit count that they have, they don't have appropriate trust accounting or financial practices in place. They don't have SOPs or standard operating procedures. And really, they then have to shift their business dramatically, or their business is not as strong just because the contract traditionally of co-hosting is not as strong, as well as the commission rates aren't as strong. And so in my eyes, if we're all getting this into financial freedom, build something that can be sold so that the transfer is easy. Whereas co-hosting, while that can be sold, and there are those that are doing it successfully, and how it's built, in some instances, it's worth it. In my opinion, most of them are not built that way because it's easy to get in. You don't have to be the merchant of record. You don't really have to create a business. So people don't run it like a business. Thus, when they get to 20 units, they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on a few things here, right? So there's, of course, the merchant of record, the trust accounting. There's, you said, the transferability of the owner agreements, the contracts, the SOPs. So, there's a lot there, right? So is this what you would do differently because you made the mistake of starting as a co-host? And if so, when did you realize you had to change things up because that was not the right approach?
Yeah. I would also want to clarify, like, I know that the online world thinks and interprets things differently. I don't think co-hosting is the worst, and I wouldn't consider it for our paths a mistake because we learned so much from doing it. However, the reality is you build a better business when you build a management company, when you control the money, when you control the trust accounting. And For us, we got into it, I'd say about 2 or 3 years into our management business as co-hosts. That's when we made the transition. And being honest, the biggest reason was scalability became really hard. It's hard to
Mhm.
have 30 to 40 owners with 40 different accounts on Airbnb, VRBO, and others that to submit claims, you have to log in and log out of each one. Not all PMSs do integrations with that many accounts. And so that
Mhm.
becomes challenging, as well as the money. I mean, at the end of the day, the money's going to them, to a client, and we got stiffed. We had clients that we would send the invoice through invest message invoicing, and they wouldn't pay. And so, we're out and we have to go the small claims route, which is hard, and collections. And if anybody meets a guy named Oscar out there, I'm still expecting my $2,500 that he owes me.
Oscar, come on, pay Aaron. They have a business to run. They need to pay some bills. Oscar, if you're listening to this, please get this paid. No, but jokes aside, man, that's interesting, right? And you touched on yet another factor here that kind of differentiates the co-host from the property manager, which is the account, right? The who owns the listing, and are
Yeah.
they all consolidated into one account that belongs to the operator, or are they spread across each of the owners? So um interesting. And if you don't mind maybe taking us back to that early beginning. So you started with a unit in your basement, I believe. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that story, and how you got started in this space. And I know there were some entrepreneurial ventures that came before this as well, so we'll get into that. But at a high level, what were you doing before? How did you stumble into this
Yeah.
hospitality vacation rental space?
Yeah, great. I used to work in Mexico in marketing, Cancun, Cozumel area, and then after the contract was up there, we came back to the States and just bought a home. And we did. My wife and I always set the goal that we wanted to live for free, and so we were managers of a 50-unit apartment complex that did free rent and stipend. But we bought a house to invest and put long-term renters in, and we bought another home. And at that time, it was time to move in, and so we moved in, and we did a mother-in-law apartment on one side, and then on the other side of that basement, we did a studio apartment. And I tried to try that whole, Airbnb gig thing. And the money was, we made 400, 800, and $1,200 in the first 3 months. And I was like, there's something to this. Kicked my brother-in-law out of the mother-in-law apartment and did that as a short-term rental. And then we did it in our long-term when the lease ended. And just from there, realized that there was viability in the business and grew in the co-hosting model for a number of years.
And if we can summarize kind of like the lessons that you learned prior to starting this business, like all the entrepreneurial ventures you had started before,
Yeah.
some of which you got to different levels in terms of growth scale, whatever. But you come in as a business entrepreneur, not as in, okay, a first time founder, but someone that had a couple of experiences, for the best or for the worst, under your belt. What was the kind of the mindset you were coming into this business with, from those lessons you had learned from the other businesses that might or might not have worked in the
Yeah.
past?
My parents are entrepreneurs, so I grew up experiencing some of those benefits as a child of that, and some of the associated stresses that come from it. But it was a lifestyle that I wanted, and in all reality, I'd planned my whole life to work for my family business. But in that process, I elected to take a couple of years and work for other people to learn from other people, as well as learn if there's other things. And in that course, I mean, really, to us actually fully launching our business, I had started up to that date about 9 other companies. And start is a loose term. I mean, some of them are side gig stuff, but I did Amazon selling, I did Amazon piracy, trade shows. My wife was relatively successful soccer player. So we did a training program with a number of trainers that was franchised like, not really. I mean, it's very loose. None of this is big time, but like all of it with the intent of I wanted my own business. And in the end, um, nobody really talks about their failures, but I'm 1 in 13 for successful businesses. Um, and my overnight success is 12 other businesses that didn't work. And then we finally got this one that did. And I was within real estate as well. We tried flipping. It wasn't our gig. So really, at the end of the day, I think what led to it is we tried enough different things and found how there was success and or wasn't the right lifestyle. Like trade shows, I love trade shows, and I could do trade shows all time, all everywhere, and sell anything in backpacks or whatever to anybody, which is what I was doing for a while. And but the family life balance wasn't there, and I didn't get to be with my family as much, and that's what I wanted to do. So this
Mhm.
facilitated a little bit more of that flexibility of still gaining the wealth, building wealth and cash flow to provide for my family while still being able to be with my family.
Got it. So fast forward a little. So you have tried all these different things. You have taken what works and what doesn't work from each of those. You stumble across this Airbnb thing. You start co-hosting because you started there at first. You said about 3 years in is when you pivot from co-hosting to becoming a more serious property management company. Um, what led to that transition? I know we kind of covered it earlier in terms of there were some scalability issues you were having and whatnot. But what was kind of the first step? Like if someone's listening and is like, oh, I think I fit that co-host criteria. I need to take that step to becoming a serious property management company. Not that co-hosting is not serious, but like you said, like
Sure.
it's less scalable, more hard, more issues, less sellable. What were some of those early steps you took to make that transition?
Yeah, I think honestly, within our little niche of the hospitality and co-hosting space, is that the vision, the what sold more to individuals is financial freedom and escaping a W-2 more than building a viable business. And I mean, which is what I did. I was working for other people, side hustling on the side, and so that's what we did. And co-hosting works, so we went with it. But um, really, building a sustainable business that can be transferred, sold, and really maintain a better lifestyle. We didn't do that because we were willing to pay any price at any hour of the day to not work for some other boss. Not which is what most of us do, is we're willing to do anything. We'll answer any message at any time. However, for us, we got to about 45 units that we were co-hosting, and we were on the phone. I mean, we were linked to our phone all the time, answering messages all the time. And really, there was two pieces that transitioned us and convinced us. One, there was an incident where we had a guest reach out about a hot tub being dirty. Hey, my hot tub's dirty. Within 30 seconds, I got a text from the owner that said, "Did you see the message?" I then a minute later got a call from the owner, and then 2 minutes later, I got a call from Airbnb. And 3 minutes later, I got a call from our guest. So, I mean, just the chaos of everybody having transparency on this issue, which, yes, it was our fault. Hot tubs should be clean. We got it cleaned and that got resolved. But having to manage an owner and say, I know, I've seen it, I'm working on it. And then to have to manage a guest and then a third party all at the same time just wasn't sustainable. And so that was a big caveat as to why we shifted into management style where we own the listing and do it that way. And the other thing too that I want to clarify is at that time we also took a very deliberate choice that Airbnb is not the only channel. There are so many other channels, and everybody has banked on Airbnb being their success. And I had another experience when I was working in e-commerce that I was in charge of in Amazon management, and our account on Amazon got shut down because our UPC was tied to a different owner. And how UPCs work is you buy them in bulk, and then you somebody buys the two that they need, and they sell it to a wholesaler. I had to track down 5 different owners back that we had authorization to use this, but in the meantime, we were losing $250,000 a day on an Amazon channel, and my employers, as you can imagine, were ecstatic about that. of nothing that I could control. I mean, I didn't submit anything wrong. It just Amazon decided that we were in violation and I had to prove the opposite. And it was in that moment I said, I'm never going to depend on one channel for all of our bookings because do I have a real business if I only get all of my business from one place? And so for us, Airbnb is a great, it drives a lot of revenue, but for us, it only drives 50% of our bookings. We work really hard to have lots of other places so that when the day comes when Airbnb decides I'm a bad guy for whatever reason, because that's just kind of the nature of multi-million dollar organizations is they could care less about me, uh, that we will have other channels and other sustainable business practices to maintain our business. And so that was
Hmm.
another shift. And then the second is we went to a conference. And in all honesty, I went to the conference to find a buyer for my company because I was so discouraged and just didn't love my life. And there at the conference, I connected with other people who use this software, and that were at similar scale that I was, that helped me realize that there was a path forward, as well as there was somebody there who talked about buying businesses and the means and ways to do that. And one of them was you need to have a management company that has trust accounting. You need to have this many units at this profitability so that we can buy you. Now, I'm not building to sell because I want to sell, but I know that if I run a company that is sellable and is prepared at any moment, our company will just be better. Uh, and it'll operate better. We can improve on things. And if the number comes, great. Like then it's worth considering. But for us, it's not like we're planning to exit within the next couple of years. We're just building a sustainable business that's profitable, that's sustainable, and could be sold if needed because it'll run better.
Hmm. And it's quite a transition that you went through, from going to this conference thinking I want to sell to being, exposed to a couple of concepts, software, and also, how a business can be sold. Then all of a sudden you're buying, your competitors, and you are, the one looking to acquire. How did you go from like being so discouraged and almost wanting to throw the towel to, going out there and looking at, continuing to grow the business?
Yeah. Our journey of failure kind of continued after that, ironically. So after that conference and towards like getting towards that, I said, okay, like there's these systems in place and these softwares. And so from there, we launched another company that was a cleaning company. And then we enhanced our management company and we were cleaning about 180 homes and we were managing 90. And, but I didn't learn from my own lesson. We didn't have SOPs in place. Um, we didn't have appropriate software. We didn't hire the right people, and we were very successfully failing. I mean, we had to take out large amounts of loans to cover payroll, which in hindsight is stupid, but we did it. And it was at that point of really my wife, in a strategic way. I mean, not like I'm leaving. She said, "You can pick a business or you can pick our family." And lucky for me, made the right choice. I picked my family, so we closed the cleaning business. We cut about 50% of our company, of the management side, that is. And we just focused on being good and doing things appropriately and having SOPs in place and having consistency and stuff. And really, at that time, I was very adverse to wanting to grow through acquisition or boutique hotels. I just wanted to actually be good at something because we had had success and like clearly to get to the scale, like we could figure out the sales side, but the actual product we weren't performing on as well as we wanted. And so really from there, we just focused on that. And then by being good at that, other opportunities and growth came naturally just because we were doing better at our core product, which was vacation rental management.
Hmm. Very interesting, and I think there's a few things here to unpack. One is, of course, knowing what your priorities are and being able to make difficult decisions based on that filter of understanding that, if your priority is the family, that's what needs to come first. That's easier said than done, I'm sure, when you're
Totally.
looking at two paths and both of them, lead to some level of suffering or some level of sacrifice, whichever you take. um, when you look back at that decision, how did you approach that decision making?
I think that measuring and understanding what success is to you is probably the biggest thing. I mean, and being honest at the time, success to me was the number. I wanted to be the guy that said on his Instagram profile, 100 units or more. That's what I wanted. And we worked towards that. And that was success. Though behind the scenes, that, to get to that number, we weren't profitable. And I was focused on that more than success in the home, which really the experience helped us realize that true success for us is being to be there with our kids. Yes, we won't win all the contracts, we won't be the best out there, but we'll have the life that we want, and the opportunity to be with our children and grow at the same time. And so I think part of that is featuring in what your success, metrics are and understanding that, as well as like just being able to be humble and say, "Yep, I failed, and so now we got to find a way out." I think oftentimes everybody just quits and says, "Let's file bankruptcy, let's move on," just because that's easy. But really, there's still plenty of ways to grow. You just got to make sure you do it correctly. And it's
Mhm.
so what's so interesting, we cut 150 contracts, or excuse me, 180 contracts for cleaning, 50 clients, and within 6 months, we were 2 times as profitable with with 50 clients as opposed to 100. It was fascinating to me to because we had worked so I mean, at the time too, I also had lower, expectations. I mean, if it had 3 walls and most of the roof, I managed it because I wanted to get to the number. But when we actually focused on, okay, what's the right unit? What's the right place? What's the operational way? What are upsales? What are ways that we can enhance ADR and occupancy and all things along those lines? By thus doing that, our profitability just went way up with way less. And that was so fascinating to me that less is more, because we were
Mhm.
just focusing on things that actually mattered as opposed to constantly selling to get more.
That's such an important concept, right? And it's so true, right? $1 that you add on top line in terms of revenue or sales, at best is going to be 20% of profit if you run a smooth operation with 20% EBITDA margins. But then you look at $1 that you can save in costs, and then all of a sudden that goes straight to the bottom line. To some degree, I think that there's the ego that plays a role in wanting to look at that number that is, bigger and bigger and bigger, and having the courage and being humble enough to take that step back and say, well, we're not going to look as big, but guess what? We're actually going to be sustainable and profitable. I think that's super important. And it also opens up operational capacity, I think, to step back and let go of some clients. It makes your team be able to refocus on what's essential. And sometimes you realize that with less tech, less staff, less whatever, you're better. You do better
Yeah, totally.
at delivering and whatnot. So anyway, that's an interesting one. You and I were talking about stoicism off the record. Is that something you always were kind of exposed to, you knew already, or is that something you discovered throughout this
It's kinda
difficult
yeah, we
periods?
kinda discovered it along the path. Just stoicism, a lot of it is just accepting things as they are. You don't necessarily look at the emotional side, but rather the logical side, and just accept that we're all gonna die and you're preparing to have a good death. I think a lot of it really what helped us is, uh, a lot sometimes anxiety I would have if a client would say, "Hey, I'd like to talk," and like all of the anxiety that goes into that means they're gonna fire us, maybe they're gonna yell at me, all that stuff. Whereas now, if a client says, "I wanna talk," say, "Okay, what's the worst that can happen?" They fire us. And what will happen? We lose a client, we, loosen that revenue, but like that's their choice and I can't control their choice, and that's okay. That just means that I can take the feedback, improve, and grow from it, or I can choose to have a bad attitude and all of that stuff. But how will that help anything? But yeah,
Mhm.
stoicism has been real crucial, I think, for Rachel, who is my wife and partner in our business, to just be a little bit more strategic about stuff as opposed to emotional. Which emotion's great. It's not like it's bad. I'm the emotional side of our relationship. Uh, but sometimes numbers don't have opinions, and the numbers don't say that we can't buy a hippie van and put our logo on the side right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one of the things I also really like about stoicism, sometimes I think that when I talk to stoicism to certain people, they perceive it as this almost rude, heartless approach to life, which,
Yeah.
I guess there could be an element of that. But really it's like, I mean, it's about just recognizing that there's a distance between what happens, so the stimulus, right, and how you react to it. And that distance between stimulus and reaction is, I think, the power that we all have as human beings. And we're getting a little, philosophical here, but I mean, it is true though, like, that ability to control your reaction to whatever happens is what's going to make or break a situation like yours, where you were about to throw the towel and decided to instead go back out there, pivot, take a step back, make the changes you had to make, and continue moving forward. So it's focusing on what you can control versus what you can't, which is so powerful. And I don't see anything rude or heartless about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's just traditionally everybody thinks that, well, what about this and what about that? But it's also stuff that you can't control, and it's also anxiety focused. Whereas the reality is, this is what I can do, and this is how I choose to react, and thus my future will be dictated accordingly because that's what I can do and that's what I can control. But I hear you on the brutish side of it and the mean side of it because it certainly can appear that way. But the reality is, at least for us in our path on the belief of it, is it's just easier to just accept things. And one of my favorite phrases of it is the obstacle is the way. I think, and there's lots of different stories and narrations, but I mean, long story short, for us, um, with the cleaning business, I mean, we had some less than desirable partner reactions. I also made some errors as a partner in kind. It's not like I was the good one. I made some bad choices as well in regards to some of my partners, to which I regret. But at the same rate, the lessons that we learned from that experience are so valuable to me. I mean, more valuable than any house or ruby or any boutique hotel that I could own because of the knowledge that I gained and the experience of it. That now, anytime that I approach a new partnership, this is my criteria and this is the ask and this is how I ask the hard questions. And uh, because of that experience, which I would not trade because that obstacle of having to go through something that is less desirable really was the path and the way for improvement so that I could become a better and enhanced business person, father, and person.
Absolutely, man. So let's talk about mergers and acquisitions, in terms of buying other management companies versus acquiring boutique hotels. What came first, coming out of this dark period?
Yeah, I think the dark period, my one of my biggest problems is life is jealousy. I say pretty actively so that I remember myself, but um really I think the boutique hotel side came first for us. I had a friend in the industry who was also doing real estate, primarily fixed and flips, to which some of them he would convert into Airbnbs. I was so incredibly jealous because I too was in the industry and like I was making my path. Yet I didn't see that I was as successful as he was. But one day I just chose and I felt prompted, I felt guided to just forgive. And like, so I called him and said, I've been jealous of you for years. I'm sorry that I have said things in my mind that are mean to you. To which he, uh, thanks. I had no idea. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm saying this for me, but I want you to know that I'm sorry that I was, inconsiderate that way. And he was opening up an RV park that he just bought in Moab, Utah. And I said, in all honesty, like, I want to celebrate with you. I want to help you open the park. Can I come down with my family for the weekend and like we'll both camp and like, be friends like we have been? But like now for me, it'll be better so that because I won't be as judgy. And totally, we went down. And while we were there, just around the campfire, he was talking about a different property they have that was a boutique hotel opportunity, so to speak. And I said, I came down here not to earn your business, but like with this property, could I look at it? Like, what could we be considered as an option for you? And it was like, yeah, sure. Like, to even think of you for that. We went the next weekend to the property. We kind of shadow booked it, meaning that we booked it as a guest so that we could experience it as a guest would to see some of that, and saw some of the opportunity of it. We then came back and said, let's do it within a week with the other partner that he had on that project. We were under contract for seller financing. And then through a crazy turn of events, I quickly found enough money from a third party investor who then became a partner with us on it, who facilitated the stuff. And so within the course of me choosing to be humble and acquiring the property was about 3 or 4 weeks of a 7 unit polygamous commune in Kanab, Utah, that we then started work on transitioning into more of a boutique hotel. And we added some exterior amenities, some pool, iterations of a pool, hot tub, some courtyards, enhancement on the inside. And that's what got us into it. I mean, I'll be transparent. It's one that we haven't found huge profitability in it yet, but we've learned a lot. And by just doing it, it's opened the door for 4 other boutique opportunities, boutique hotel stuff that we've done in other states that we're managing, or we have an equity share in.
Got it. And so, what have you learned? That you did differently with your next boutique
Don't
hotel
Yeah, don't buy
acquisitions.
polygamous communes.
I
And
see.
for
I
those that
see.
don't know, in southern Utah, there's a region. Polygamy is where you have more than one spouse. Traditionally, the male has more than one wife, and they're relatively common in that area. It's not necessarily something that's legal, but it's something that do within their religious means. Um, anyways, I say it jokingly, but really on that first one, we learned that whatever your boutique hotel deal is that you're doing, make sure to understand what your exit strategy is. I think additionally understand your market of what the workforce is. I actually just went to a dinner with a number of other boutique hotel operators, probably all of us collectively. There's 15 to 20 boutique hotels that we all collectively managed. And all of us complained about labor. Not that
Mm,
necessarily it was too expensive, but rather all of our challenges of finding labor to facilitate the needs of the complex. So I think that that's something, um, this specific place, it's in a more rural based area where workforce is just less. And so finding individuals is challenging. We've done some
mhm.
iterations like work campers where we'll bring someone in and they become a camp host or things along those lines that's helped facilitate. But I think that that's a big thing is just understand what the labor is, as well as on this specific project, the capital expenditures to maintain the property are much higher and the utilities are much higher than we expected, just because, yet again, smaller market, utilities are expensive there. And then it's an older property that things break and it's not like go fix, go change the part, but rather dig this line up, do this. And it's more than we've expected. So that's been a hard lesson to learn, but at the same rate, it's super valuable because now in these future ones, we understand those things a little bit better so that we can mitigate some of that.
And also, like, just to make sure I understand. So, when you did
Yeah.
that first boutique hotel deal, your experience in real estate, I mean, you had this goal of like not like living for free, so house hacking. So you had invested in real estate like residentially, it sounds like. But
Yeah.
as far as like such a commercial, larger scale deal, was that your first sort of
Yeah.
exposure to this real estate investment game at that level?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it was the biggest deal that we had done to date for sure. I mean, most of the other ones were traditional residential homes that we flipped into buy and hold where we kept them for a long time and or flipped them,
Yeah.
or just vacation rental homes that we were facilitating. And so, like entering into it, I mean, it seems there's a lot of comparisons that are similar. Some of the commercial aspects of it, there's some nuances that are different, but like uh, I know this sounds so stupid, but really we learn the best by just doing. And yeah, it's kind of stupid to just buy something that you think can work, but I mean, at the end of the day, for us, we have learned that there's a lot of opportunity in other garbage that people won't touch, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of places that can be enhanced, can be managed better that traditionally most, investors won't look at it for the reasons that they won't when there's strategic ways. It's definitely harder. I mean, if you buy something nice and new, it's nice and new and it's awesome and it's cash flow, which is a great way. And we're doing some of that as well. But also, if an asset is depreciated and it's run down, there's it can only go up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the financing piece, just to touch on this a little bit, is tricky. With boutique hotels as well. Forget about traditional bank loans that can give you 80% of the purchase
Sure.
price. So what have you learned as far as the financing goes? What's possible? You talked about some seller financing, but as you've done more of these deals, especially in the boutique hotel space, what have you learned about what's possible, and what are some of the ways in which financing can be achieved?
Yeah, I'm probably not the world's best expert on this because all of our deals we bought on seller finance.
Well,
Um,
I mean, that's already something. You've learned a thing
right.
or two on how to get those.
Sure. So, I mean, really what's happening in the United States, as everybody knows, is those of the boomer generation are beginning to retire, and thus transferring their wealth. Now, within the motel, boutique hotel space, there are a lot of opportunities where these operators, they have operated these businesses for 10 to 40 years, and it's their livelihood, it's their life. They own it outright. And so they want to have an appropriate relationship with those that they're selling it to, and they just don't want to sell it to some big conglomerate because it's their life. So that's a piece of it that I think if you real estate is more about relationships than it is about the actual transaction. And that's what's facilitated a lot of deals that we from the seller finance side. There's that as well as because they're at an age that they're retiring, their children traditionally don't have the cash that they want, or the parent doesn't want to just outright sell it to kids because they too want to secure their future. And so seller financing and the capital or the capital gains tax and everything, it facilitates a lot of need because they trust you, but they're willing to take on more risks because they want to work with a better person as opposed to outright selling it on the market. Now, not true everywhere. I think really the biggest thing, and I know that it simplifies the whole process, is if you can build out good financials, not necessarily just as projections, but even if you can get a seller finance, run it for a time frame, and then build up better transactions, finding the money is easy. It really is. There's lots of people that are lending. There's lots. I mean, granted, find the rates, shopping. We work with a number of specific ones for specific needs. But at the end of the day, if you can prove financials, it'll work. Now we have one project that we're working on that we went to 16 banks and none of them wanted to lend on it because not a nice property, all of that. So what we've done is some iterations of rental arbitrage, but of a motel, and we are renting it to build up the capital, the books, so then we can go to investors and everything to facilitate. And we're still working on that project, and it's not like we've had the home run success on it, but definitely there's plenty of opportunity that even building up the books to then show a financial institution, and then finding if here's the biggest thing, and, like, I know I just have been on this little rant right here, but wherever there's a deal, money shows up. If
Mhm.
you have good deals, people want to invest in good deals, and that sometimes is an indicator to us is if we have a deal, we send it out to our list or to individuals who know we're investing and they're not interested. Like, sometimes that is one of our metrics of like, "Oh, this isn't a good deal," even though I'm jazzed about it. It's not a good deal because the people who give money don't wanna give money, so it's not that good of terms, or it's not
Mhm.
that good of a project or place. Sometimes that's a telling indicator of that because wherever I mean, there's a lot of money out there and people wanna put it in places, and if you can't get it, it's probably because it's not a good deal.
That's interesting. And I think another common theme that comes back is the relationships, right? You talked about how that played a role on the acquisition of some management operations as well. So let's talk a little bit about that, and how
Yeah.
you approach that, mergers or acquisitions side of things from a relationship perspective. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so, I mean, really, for our boutique hotels and for the acquisition of some of the other companies, they've all come about, um, because I call it being a good neighbor. So, while we do have competitors in our space, at the end of the day, I can't have all of the houses and I can't manage all of them. And I don't want every owner because I'm not the right personality fit for every owner, nor is my model correct for everybody. So there's a lot of houses out there. And though all of us want all of them. I don't want all of them. And so I want to be a good neighbor. And so all of my air quote competitors I'm friends with because life is easier as opposed to trying to outperform somebody on that. And I'm just friends with them and nice with them. And some of them, in some instances, have said, "Hey, I'm hitting this hard time. Are you interested in buying my company?" Um, and really, that is how most of our acquisitions have come about. Um, our very first one, and it's actually something we fell into. Um, I had a friend, and he's from a Facebook group, and he messaged and said, "I'm thinking about selling my company. I think you'd be a great option. Um, I can I send you the stuff?" And I said, "Nope, not interested. No thanks." To which he said, "Okay, cool. I found your email on the internet. I emailed it to you. Take a look." And I said, "I probably won't, but thanks." And then the next day he emailed and said, "I've looped you in on another email with the finance partner who's ready to finance it. He just needs a few documents from you. Go check it out." And so, I mean, if he was going to all this effort just to, I mean, platter it for me, I was like, might as well look at it. And we looked at it, and he'd built a good company that sell. It came with 2 employees. Financing was in place with an SBA loan. We applied and qualified for it and facilitated it, and it actually enhanced and it leveled up our other management because they were doing some things that were better than us, and we were doing some things that were better than them, and it leveled up the both organizations. And in all honesty, I think we paid a little bit more than the actual worth of it, of what the revenue and probably the other thing too is like we paid most of it up front, whereas retention is and churn rate is a big thing when you buy companies is how many contracts are going to stay. That was
Mhm.
something that we just didn't really put in metrics for, and we should have, which I've learned now. And it's not I'm not mad about it because I, I feel as though that first one, while we did pay the higher rate, I paid for the education and the opportunity for it. And then from there, um, I just talked to people and just asked and said, if you ever know anybody selling, let me know. And last year, we had we were talked to 7 different companies, went under contract with 3, 4, I'd say. Uh, one, 2 of them we bought purchased, and one fell out of contract because of filing bankruptcy. So we called the contracts and earned a number of those contracts for free because it was a bad situation and it was an opportunity. So there's all of these I would call. I mean, another thing too in the space is traditionally if there's 20 units, 25 units or less, they call it a tuck in because it tucks into your organization. And traditionally, you're not really buying a company; you're buying contracts and you're buying relationships. So that is a little bit different of a buy, and it's really based off of the strength of the contract and some of those things. Whereas uh, an acquisition where you're buying a company, traditionally it comes with the brand, it comes with systems, it comes with employees, and that is a little bit different where things are merging in. And we haven't necessarily done any at that large scale. We've just done more tuck-ins. But it's a I think what I like about it is it's a really good way to grow quickly because you can get 10 plus contracts at one time as opposed to doing the traditional trying to generate leads from different funnels and getting 10 contracts over a number of months.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, you mentioned a few things that I think are interesting to dig deeper into. So one is, you might have overpaid, but there's a learning component to that. So seeing those kind of things as that was the cost of paying down the ignorance debt. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one way to put it. But really, like, you are wanting to buy the business as a buyer based on the numbers from the past. The seller is trying to sell based on what the future can look like, and it's like, trying to find that middle ground of what you actually have, that can be transacted. Now, you also said that churn rate, of course, is key, right? So of course you might be buying a business and it's worth X amount, but then if you lose half of those contracts in the transition, then all of a sudden, yeah, like, you could have had the right price, but you ended up overpaying. How do you
With a
how
diluted
do you
product, yeah.
yeah, how do you consider that currently, because it's been 3 acquisitions that you've made. So is there
Yeah.
just more of an earnout to your deals, or how do you
Yeah.
how do
I
you
mean,
approach that?
our last one actually also was a seller finance deal, the of how we facilitated it. Um, And I mean, I talk a lot about seller finance, but really, for those that are getting into the space, like, people find value, but, like, sometimes finding the financing can be challenging, and or the process is not enjoyable. Like, it's not that I love seller finance because I think it's the best in the world. Sometimes, like, just trying to qualify and working with a bank loses you the deal, and one of our contracts, that's what it was, is I tried to facilitate with the bank and all the things that were needed. By the time that the owner was truly ready, the opportunity was gone because they wanted the money, which was a much lesser price compared to what it could have been. But I think as far as going back to it for the churn rate, I mean, the biggest thing is, how can you plan for future events? And so you can come up with an agreed value per contract and or this is what the business is. And then you either put in metrics in place where that individual could be like an accu-hire, where you are bringing that person into the organization for a time frame with the intent of maintaining contracts. Or another aspect of it can be, we give you 50% or we give a percentage upfront that is for the business. And then after a time frame, you get the remaining balance for the number of contracts that are maintained. Um, and, and a lot of it too, yet again, it comes down to the strength of the contract and what the financials of it are, because a lot of people, and this is also another reason why, in some ways, I say what I have about co-hosting is people get in looking for financial freedom. They get to 20 units and realize they've replaced their financial freedom and their W-2 with a different job that, and now they don't have benefits, and now they have to work 18 hours, and now they've got to, respond to guests who can't read the Wi-Fi code. And so those that are in that situation, really, have you built it in a way that it could be packaged and you're not part of the deal? Would it still be worth it? And 95% of the time, it's not. It Businesses, co-hosting businesses are centered around the main operator or individual, and if they leave, so do the associated contracts. And that's where really, um, true value comes in, is the more that an individual steps out of an organization being the sole operator and it runs itself, so to speak, the higher value can get, because then truly it's generating revenue and can be transferred to anybody without, oh no, Aaron's gone. He was my friend and I'm now out. Which our very first business, we had that happen with 3 clients that immediately when it happened, they called and said, we were only doing this because the owner was our friend. We're out, or we'd like a rate cut, to which you said, let's do a rate cut because we still want to maintain you. And then they all sold their homes anyway.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's not a blame. It's just the nature of stuff that I didn't know getting into
Yeah.
it.
And of course, in terms of the way you run your business, I'm sure that having acquired 3 companies gives you an interesting perspective of what makes a business valuable, what makes a business sellable. What have you changed in the way you get involved in your business, the areas you decide to get involved in your business, maybe the way you structure your organization, whatever, as far as making your business sellable one day, like you said, not because you're looking to do it, but
Yeah.
more so because by doing so, you're building a more sustainable organization.
I'm going to shout out to one of my heroes. Her name is Jody Clear. She is with I Love Vacations, and she is the person that taught me true value in this. I was on a panel at a conference talking about acquisitions, thinking I was hot stuff. At the end of the panel, I got on a table and I sat next to, random person. And what do you do? Oh, I do mergers and acquisitions. Oh, so do I. I bought 3 companies. And she said, oh, good for you. And I said, what about you? Oh, we we've acquired about 1,200 units over the past 3 years. And I was like, "Ugh, clearly I need to be humble and learn from you." So I asked her, I said, "Well, you're the expert. What should I know? What should I learn?" And, she said this in such a nonchalant way, but what she doesn't know is it's changed the entire trajectory of our company, and I really look up to her. She says, "Dig a mile deep." Dig a mile deep. And she used the example of Park City, which is where a number of her units are located. If you have 100 to 200 units in Park City, that means you now can have, 3 to 4 vans that have Park City Vacation Rentals on the side, then have your handyman that are driving everywhere, and you're a staple in the community. You can sponsor local teams, events, and you become a big dog. So then there's truly notoriety and there is brand recognition. Whereas if you have 10 units here, 10 units here, one contract here, how sustainable and known is your business? As well as if you have 200 units, then there's just so many economies of scale. You can have a warehouse, you can have a linen partner, you can have centralized cleaning staff locations. You can get better pricing because you're within this geographic area. I mean, there's so many things that come from digging a mile deep. And so when she told us that, we actually cut a number of our clients that were on the outskirts of our area, and we just said, okay, we're digging a mile deep, and so everywhere where we have a contract, we work really hard to get the neighbors who also are managing vacation homes and even doing deals because in the moment that we have significant units in a neighborhood, we can crush it. I mean, I'm at our office, and in this neighborhood, we have 3 homes that we manage, and they are our best, not because they're the nicest or sexiest, but, like, when there's a problem, somebody shows up within 2 minutes because 'cause we're literally next door to enhance it. So I think that that's the biggest thing of when you're acquiring things because it's so tempting to get the email from Jacoby or anybody who's sending out here's the newest acquisition. And it's so fun. It's so fun to look at Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and Spokane, Washington on the newest business. But the reality is, if I buy this company that has 40 contracts there, am I going to have the amplified success of bringing those into my organization that doesn't know the market or isn't localized? I mean, even I'm kind of getting on a tangent here, but Casa Go, who just bought Vacasa, I mean, their biggest reason why they had success in the actual acquisition of Vacasa is that they wanted to focus on localized managers in the franchise model, and they're having more success than they had before. Clearly, time will tell, but I've spoken to some of the CEOs and seen them present, and that's something that's impacted me. And so I think really that concept of like dialing in what you do and the type of unit. Um, and last thing I'll say, Sarah Brown is another hero of mine. When I actually considered getting into this, I reached out to 3 different managers in our area and said, "Can I job shadow for the day?" 2 said, "Sure, that'd be fine, $500 for the day." And Sarah said, "Sure, I'd love the help. Come hang out. Meet me here." Uh, and so I followed her for the day, and she only accepts properties that are within half a mile of downtown Park City because of the operational success, and they get to know those units and they're the best at it. So I very passionate on that concept of digging a mile deep.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And to your point on how attractive the idea of expanding into new markets might sound, like not only is there the excitement of, oh, I'm gonna be, national now, but also like you think also on the diversification side of things. Oh, well, now I can have a market where maybe, when my market is in the middle of the low season, this is going to be a market that's going to be in the high season. But
Yeah.
I guess there's a
And
point
there is
at
validity in
which,
that. I do want to
yeah,
clarify, there is validity in that. Like, but at the same rate, we're in Utah and Idaho. We have some ski markets that clearly winter is the best, and we also have some lake markets where summer is the best. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but also geographically, we're still relatively close and we're still local that we can have that success. So I
and
think it's
not
a
doing
great
so
way,
too
but
early on. It's just not doing so too early on, like building
yeah,
that critical mass first before starting to look elsewhere, and then you can start to look elsewhere.
yeah,
And the tricky piece is like when you look elsewhere, how do you build that critical mass, without failing trying, without
yeah.
failing in the process. So anyway, that's interesting as well. So on your end, as far as the real estate goes, where do you see the state of the real estate market? I'm sure you're having a lot of conversations with homeowners, with other industry colleagues and whatnot.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What are you telling your owners? What are you kind of like pushing out there in terms of a message for your owners to keep in mind, as far as where we're at in terms of the economy, in terms of the real estate market, just in general, like, and when you look at what's going on at a macro level, what do you see?
Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of a shift. Oh, the guest experience is enhanced, and so traditional Airbnbs where you throw furniture in, like that era is over. And having success in that, you have to have focus. on guest experience and guest avatar, and that's not specific to vacation rentals. That's midterm as well. That whatever type of midterm rental guests that you're trying to acquire, like you need to focus the amenity spread on that person, and the amenity could be a working desk, not just a kitchen counter. I mean that is a huge thing for somebody who wants to travel and work remotely. It could be niche down on traveling nurses, and there's so many different aspects of that. And so I think that experience overall and focusing on trying to acquire the best guest avatar, that's probably a big thing we're talking a lot about. I think that there's still a lot of opportunity for creative finance and seller finance in lots of different ways, just because most of the older generation that's retiring, I mean, they have great assets that can be enhanced and or taken over, but they don't want to pay taxes, which is not bad. It's their prerogative. But because of that, if you have good relationships and are able to just maximize opportunities of how they're already doing things, because most of them, they're not on all of the platforms. They're not, utilizing some of different things. But there's just those small applications, and that really, if you have a relationship, and one example of that is I've been working with a family for 3 years, and we've gone through 3 iterations of negotiations to buy an asset. And finally, after 3 years, one of the family members finally decided to actually meet with me in person, as opposed to working through a different family member, because we've earned enough trust to be able to qualify for it, and we are beating out other competitors who are offering bigger numbers because we have a relationship and what our intention is with the property, rather than uh, those that are willing to pay more with different intentions. So I think that that's another thing, and then I think probably the biggest thing is just trust the numbers. Like, we're in a market where appreciation is a little bit better, and lifestyle focus is. Whereas if you're looking for an asset that is very specific to cash flow, there's a lot of other markets that are performing better. I think a lot of it comes down to you as the buyer. If you want to invest in short term rental, is understanding what your motivation is. If the motivation is you want to have the chalet and have outsource some of your debt through bookings, then that's a great opportunity. But if you're truly looking for cash flow, then you need to dial in the experience, have amenities that nobody else has, and an experience that also adds on top of that, compared to just buying and putting furniture in.
And in terms of revenue performance, um, what are you seeing, for people that bought at the peak of the market, both in terms of home values as well as revenue expectations? How are you navigating kind of like those conversations as far as you know what they need to expect moving forward, and making sense of what you're seeing, and I'm sure you get a lot of pressure from those homeowners potentially, to some degree.
Yeah, I'd say that knowing what your market is and what the asset is, short term rental is just a sexier version of long term rental. I mean, at the end of the day, I know I'm downplaying what I do every day, but the reality is, not every asset is the perfect vacation rental, and so midterm rental is a very viable option, and shifting to that is good. I mean, finding the flexibility and realizing that there's sometimes to invest in some models and sometimes there's not, and even transitioning into long term, subject to what the property is. It's just short term rental is one form of cash flow that can be acquired, but there's so many other iterations of the same thing, and it's rather than saying I got to make this work. It's more so what does the market want and what are the bookings showing. I mean, at the end of the day, uh, yet again, what people's motivations are. And if it is long term success, then okay, like midterm rental's better. It gets less stress and all of that. And I won't say you have to put a hot tub in, but if you want a nice place that you can use when you come to town, yeah, let's put a hot tub in. Let's get a sauna in there and let's put murals on the wall, because that's the experience that guests want. Uh, so
Yeah, and
yeah,
absolutely, and also to your point on the cash flow side of things, is understanding, like, like you said, is it an appreciation market, is it a cash flow market, but also, even if you're not cash flowing, but you're paying down your debt, like sometimes, that's
yeah,
that's good. Like
Yeah, and yet
some
again, I
owners
mean,
don't
there's
consider that.
that's the magic, I think, of investing in real estate. Realizing there's a lot. I mean, there is the cost segregation that can be done so that you're mitigating your tax liability. There is debt payoff. There is appreciation. There's cash flow. So yet again, it really comes down to what is the success that you want. You know, the success metrics, and then finding the associated asset for that. And then sometimes, I mean, if it's cash flow, okay, if that's the plan, short-term rental may not be that right jam because it's in a more urban market, whereas midterm rental will. I mean, we actually are shifting one of our units, one of our places. Most of them we're shifting to midterm just because short-term rental for that specific market, it's not producing like it used to. And so the midterm rental, it's just more consistent, more viable, and it's what the asset needs compared to, the jazziness of what short-term rental feels like. It, I mean, ironically, it kind of falls in stoicism. What does the numbers say? What does logic dictate? And rather than using emotional thinking, just follow the numbers because they don't have emotions. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to cash flow. And that's the aspect of it. So do what you need to cash flow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Well, listen, Aaron, I could keep you here for 2 more hours, and it would be
Dale, vamos,
my
let's do it.
pleasure to do so. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm not sure you want to spend 2 more hours with me here. I could, but actually, I'm sure you have other things to get to, and it was a pleasure, man. It was a pleasure to have you on. It's been very insightful. I hope people took notes. I took some mental notes for sure.
Dale, yep.
And yeah, man. Yeah, thanks for taking the time, and I really, really appreciate it. Any final words of advice you want to share, or just
I, I'm
ways in which people can connect?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm real law of abundance, and I'm really happy to help and talk to anybody. I like making friends. That's I have very few talents in life, and making friends is one of them. So feel free to reach out. Conmigo Vacation Rentals is our company. You can find us on Instagram at Stay Conmigo. You can find me on Instagram at AaronBnB .Kirkham. Or give me a call, shoot me a text, 801-623-6885. Spammers alike, send it over. Who cares? I'll talk to you.
And
Make friends.
the owner that still owes you some money. What was his name again?
Oscar, yeah, send it.
Oscar.
Oscar.
You better call.
Oscar and Lisa. Lisa's another one. I sure would love that. I'll keep sending you the invoices every month.
All right, Arden. Thanks so much for taking the time, man. It was great to have you on.
Yeah. Pleasure. Thanks. See ya.